After giving birth, my unfaithful husband refused to sign the birth certificate. That bastard is trash, he doesn't deserve my last name. He shouted, humiliating me in front of his entire family. But he turned pale and started to tremble. When the doctor... The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, casting a sterile glow across the hospital room. Emily lay motionless, her body aching, her mind drifting somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief. The soft whimper of the newborn in her arms was the only thing anchoring her to the present. She looked down, brushing a strand of damp hair away from her flushed face, and tried to smile. It was a boy, perfect, fragile, warm. His tiny fingers curled instinctively around hers, and in that moment, despite everything, love surged through her. But the door creaked open, snapping her back to reality. Jason stepped inside. There was no warmth in his expression. No curiosity. No wonder. Just a clenched jaw and hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket. Emily blinked in confusion, trying to read the distance in his eyes. "You're here," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. He nodded, looked past her toward the baby, then away again. "I'm not signing anything," he muttered. Emily's heart skipped. "What?" Jason's voice rose, sharper this time. "I said I'm not signing anything. Not the birth certificate. Not any damn form." Her mouth went dry. The baby squirmed gently in her arms, as if sensing the shift in the room. "Jason, what are you talking about?" she asked, her voice shaking. But before he could answer, the door opened again. His mother, Linda, swept into the room with Tyler, Jason's younger brother, trailing behind. A nurse followed, clipboard in hand. The air became stifling. "Oh, let me see my grandson," Linda exclaimed, reaching forward. Emily instinctively pulled the baby closer, her protective instincts flaring. Jason stepped between them. Don't touch him." The room froze. Everyone turned toward him. "What are you doing?" Linda asked, startled. "Jason, this is your son." He pointed at the baby without looking. "He's not mine." Emily stared, mouth agape, unable to process the words. The nurse took a cautious step back. Tyler glanced between his brother and Emily, visibly confused. Linda's eyes narrowed. "What the hell are you saying?" Jason turned fully now, facing the group. "I'm saying I'm not signing anything. That bastard is not getting my name." The baby whimpered again, startled by the tension. Emily felt her throat close up, the sting of tears blurring her vision. "Stop it," she managed. "Stop this now, Jason." But he wasn't done. "You think I'm a fool?" he barked, his voice echoing off the sterile walls. "You really thought I'd give my name to someone else's child?" Emily looked around, waiting, begging, for someone to intervene, to say something, to stop this madness. But the silence was deafening. Linda's mouth hung open. Tyler was frozen, visibly shaken. The nurse quickly excused herself, mumbling something about giving them privacy. Emily felt like the room was collapsing in on her. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice cracking. "You're tired. You're angry. We can talk later." "I'm not talking later." Jason snapped. "You want a certificate? You want a name? Go find the guy you really slept with." He turned, making for the door. "Jason!" Emily cried out. He didn't stop. Linda finally found her voice. "This isn't the time or place for this." Jason wheeled around. "Oh, it's exactly the time. She wants to parade this kid around like I'm the father? No. I want nothing to do with him. Or her." He pointed at Emily with an accusatory finger. "She brought this on herself." Tyler took a step forward. "Jay, that's enough, man." Jason shook his head and stormed out of the room, the door slamming shut behind him. Silence returned, but this time it felt heavier, suffocating. Emily stared at the door, her body still trembling from labor, now racked with a fresh wave of pain, emotional, deeper than anything she'd felt in hours of contractions. Her arms tightened around the baby, who had begun to cry. "I don't understand," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Linda looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Tyler remained quiet, watching Emily with conflicted eyes. "Let me hold him," Linda said, reaching again. But Emily turned her head. "No." The rejection was cold, final. Linda sighed and stepped back. "Maybe it's best we come back later." They left one by one, leaving Emily alone once more. The tears finally came, hot and silent, rolling down her cheeks as she rocked her son gently, trying to shield him from a world that, just moments after his arrival, had already turned cruel. Emily remained motionless long after the door had closed. The quiet that followed Jason's outburst was not peace, it was a haunting stillness, like the moment after a bomb explodes, when dust hangs heavy in the air and nothing feels real. The baby's tiny whimpers were the only signs of life in the sterile hospital room. Her arms were sore, her body ached in places she never thought could hurt, but none of that compared to the raw devastation settling in her chest. Minutes passed. Or maybe longer. Time blurred. Then the door opened again. Rachel. Her best friend. She rushed in, cheeks flushed and eyes wide, clearly having heard something from the hallway. Emily couldn't speak, her throat closed up the moment she saw her. "Oh my God," Rachel whispered, looking at her with a mixture of shock and fury. "What happened?" Emily couldn't answer. She just held the baby tighter. Rachel crossed the room, sat at the edge of the bed, and put a hand on her shoulder. "I came as soon as I could. I ran into Linda and Tyler in the hallway. They looked shaken." Emily managed to shake her head slowly, a silent plea not to ask. Rachel gave a quiet nod, understanding enough not to push. She shifted focus to the baby, her voice softening. "He's beautiful, Em." Emily blinked, finally letting her eyes drop to the child in her arms again. "He didn't even look at him," she murmured. "Not once." Rachel stiffened. "Jason?" Emily nodded. "He walked in, said he wasn't signing anything. Then started screaming about the baby not being his. Right in front of everyone." Rachel's jaw clenched. "What?" Before either of them could say more, a knock at the door interrupted them. The nurse from earlier re-entered, followed by Linda and Tyler. But they weren't alone this time. Jason was back. And so were two more members of his family, his older sister, Meredith, and their father, Harold. Emily's heart dropped. The room, once hers, was now filled with people. People who were not here for support, but for a verdict. Linda took a few tentative steps forward. "Emily, we all want to understand what's happening." Emily didn't respond. She shifted the baby slightly, keeping his face nestled into her shoulder. Harold, tall and stern, spoke next. "Jason says the child isn't his. That there's been deception." Emily's eyes snapped up to his. "Deception?" she echoed. Meredith crossed her arms. "Don't act innocent, Emily. You know how this looks." Rachel stood abruptly. "Excuse me?" "She just gave birth," she snapped. "And you're cornering her like she's on trial?" Harold raised a hand. "This is not about blame. We just want the truth." Emily's grip tightened on her son. "The truth? The truth is I was alone for most of this pregnancy. Jason pulled away from me months ago. He came home late, avoided me, lied about where he was. And I still stayed. I stayed hoping he'd be here for his child." Jason stepped forward, voice laced with venom. "Don't you dare turn this on me. You're the one who cheated." Emily flinched. "I never cheated," she whispered. He scoffed. "Then explain how that baby isn't mine. Explain how you know that already," Rachel fired back. "There hasn't even been a test." Linda tried to calm things down. maybe we should all take a breath. But Jason was on a roll now. You think I'm stupid? He doesn't even look like me. Rachel turned on him. You barely looked at him. I don't need to, he shouted. I just know. And I won't let her ruin my life. Emily felt herself disconnecting. Her body was in the room, but her mind started to drift again. The pressure, the judgmental stares, the accusation, it was all too much. The pain from childbirth hadn't even begun to subside, and now she was being dragged into a courtroom disguised as a hospital room. Tyler, quiet until now, finally spoke up. Jay, this isn't the way. Jason turned. Don't start with me. No, Tyler said, stepping forward. You're going too far. I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't it. This isn't how you treat the mother of your child. Jason scoffed. He's not my child. Emily closed her eyes, trying to hold back the tears burning behind her lids. The baby stirred, sensing her distress. Rachel leaned close. You don't have to do this with them. We can call hospital security, Emily. But before Emily could answer, another knock came at the door. Dr. Collins entered, eyes scanning the room, noting the tension instantly. What's going on here? He asked, walking over to Emily's side, checking the monitors instinctively. We're discussing the paternity of the child, Meredith answered coldly. The doctor raised an eyebrow. In the middle of postpartum recovery? Jason stepped in. She's lying about who the father is. I want the hospital to know I'm not signing anything. Dr. Collins glanced at Emily, then at the baby, then back at the group. You're creating unnecessary stress in a medical environment, he said. This is not the time or place. Jason sneered. She brought this on herself. No, Dr. Collins said firmly. You brought this here. The baby started crying louder now. Emily bounced gently, trying to soothe him. You're not even interested in him, she said quietly. You didn't hold him. You didn't ask his name. You came in here to accuse me. To humiliate me. Jason didn't respond. Linda stepped forward again, her voice softer. Emily, is there any chance? Emily cut her off. No. I have never been unfaithful. Rachel was shaking with anger. This is disgusting. Dr. Collins walked toward the family. Unless any of you are medical professionals or immediate caretakers, I'll need you to leave. Now. Meredith bristled. You can't just. I can, he said, tapping his badge. Hospital policy. The group hesitated. Jason looked like he wanted to fight, but Harold placed a hand on his shoulder and said, We'll talk later. Reluctantly, they began to file out. Tyler lingered, casting one last look at Emily. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of this. She nodded, lips pressed tightly together. Once the door shut behind the last of them, the silence felt sacred. Dr. Collins turned back to Emily. Are you okay? Emily shook her head. I'll have security note that only approved visitors can enter your room from now on, he said. You don't need to face that again. Rachel helped adjust Emily's pillows as she tried to sit up more comfortably. They're treating you like a criminal, she muttered. But we'll get to the bottom of this. Dr. Collins hesitated, then glanced at the baby again. Actually, Emily, there's something I need to discuss with you. Something medical. She looked at him, confused. What is it? But he didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked, when you're ready, let me know. It concerns the blood work. Some results came back that we need to go over. Emily felt the dread return. She looked down at her son. Nothing in her world felt steady anymore. Emily sat upright now, propped up by pillows, her newborn finally asleep in the bassinet beside her. Rachel had gone home hours ago after insisting that Emily call her if anything happened. The hospital room was quiet again, but her mind was anything but. Jason's accusations, the coldness of his family, and Dr. Collins's cryptic mention of blood work swirled inside her like a storm that refused to settle. She didn't sleep that night. How could she? Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Jason's face, twisted with rage and something else. Something she hadn't fully understood until now. Not hatred. Not even jealousy. Fear. It wasn't just that he was angry. He was terrified. Not of the baby. Not of her. But of something else. Something deeper. And as Emily sat in silence, her mind began to stitch together moments from the past that had once seemed unimportant. Moments that now, in retrospect, pulsed with quiet warning. 2 months before her due date, she had found a receipt for a hotel room in Jason's coat pocket. It was dated for a weekday afternoon, while he was supposed to be at work. When she confronted him, he brushed it off as a work meeting that went late. She wanted to believe him, and she did. Or at least she pretended to. But then there were the phone calls, ones he would take in the garage or outside, always ending with, "I'll call you back." Whenever she asked who it was, he gave vague answers, a guy from the firm, or someone from marketing. Never a name. Never a full sentence. And there was that night she woke up around 2 in the morning and found his side of the bed cold. He wasn't in the house. She waited until dawn, and when he finally returned, he said he had gone out for air, had fallen asleep in the car. She had wanted to scream. Instead, she accepted it. Pregnant, hormonal, emotionally stretched to the edge, she told herself it wasn't the time to argue. She needed to keep things calm for the baby's sake. But calm never came. Only avoidance. Emily didn't want to believe her husband was cheating. She didn't want to believe that the man she had built a life with, moved to Pittsburgh for, started a home with, planned a future with, was slipping through her fingers. But now, looking back, she realized something far worse than infidelity had always been lurking beneath the surface. Jason was hiding something. And it was bigger than another woman. The next morning, Dr. Collins returned. He closed the door behind him and took a seat across from her, his expression unreadable. "I wanted to speak to you yesterday, but it wasn't the right moment," he began. Emily nodded cautiously. "You said it was about the blood work." He opened the folder in his hands, reviewing a set of printed test results. The standard procedure after birth involves blood typing both the mother and child. It helps us prepare for any emergencies or complications. Emily waited, her chest tightening. "Your baby has AB positive blood," he continued, "and you're O negative." She nodded slowly. "Okay." Dr. Collins hesitated. "You also listed your husband as a negative." Emily frowned. "Yes, that's his blood type. I remember. He had it on his driver's license. He used to joke that he was rare." The doctor set the papers down. "Emily, an A-negative father and an O-negative mother cannot biologically produce a child with AB-positive blood. It's genetically impossible." Her mouth went dry. "I don't understand." "This doesn't necessarily mean infidelity," he said quickly, sensing her panic. "There could be a mistake in the paperwork, or Jason may have been misinformed about his blood type. But," he paused. "Given his behavior, and the timing of his reaction yesterday, I believe he already knew this incompatibility would be discovered." Emily stared at him. "You think he knew?" "Yes. And he was preparing for it. Anticipating the confrontation." She leaned back against the pillows, struggling to process what this meant. "If he knew," she said slowly, "then why would he accuse me so loudly? Why wouldn't he just, quietly ask for a test?" Dr. Collins looked at her carefully. "Because he needed to redirect the suspicion. Loud accusations of betrayal are often a defense mechanism. If he could make you look guilty first, he might avoid deeper questions being asked about himself." Emily's mind reeled. "Are you saying Jason isn't who he says he is?" "I don't know," the doctor said honestly. "But something is not right. And I believe he's terrified of what might come out if someone starts digging. She rubbed her temples, exhausted beyond words. So what do I do? We'll order a full paternity test, he said. Not just for legal purposes, but to ensure medical accuracy going forward. It will take a few days. I'll make sure it's expedited. Emily nodded, numb. The room felt colder now. Thank you, Dr. Collins, she whispered. After he left, she picked up her phone. There were missed calls from Rachel, a few texts, and one voicemail. She didn't listen to it. Instead, her fingers moved on their own, opening her email app. She searched for an old email, one she hadn't looked at in months. It was from Jason. Dated nearly a year ago. In it, he'd forwarded her some health insurance documents, casually mentioning an appointment he'd had at a urology clinic. She had forgotten all about it. But now, with a heavy heart, she tapped into the message again, rereading every word. Routine visit, he had called it. But why would a 32-year-old man with no known issues be visiting a fertility specialist out of the blue? Her blood ran cold. She began searching through her phone, opening old photo folders, scrolling through months of images, looking for a clue, a pattern, a date. And then she found it, a picture she had taken of him standing in front of a small clinic, wearing sunglasses, holding a coffee cup. He had joked about hating doctors. But now, seeing the clinic's name in the background, her stomach twisted. It was the same urology practice affiliated with the hospital. He hadn't gone for a checkup. He had gone for a diagnosis. And whatever he had learned there, he never told her. She placed the phone down and looked at her baby again, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos that surrounded them. Jason had come to the hospital ready to disown this child. Not because he was unsure, but because he already knew the truth. And he was terrified it might reveal something much darker. The next morning's sunlight leaked through the blinds, casting thin stripes across the white hospital sheets. Emily hadn't slept. Her mind felt raw, each thought scraping against the next like shards of glass. The only thing grounding her was the soft, steady breathing of her baby beside her crib. She brushed his tiny hand with her finger, whispering a promise she wasn't sure she could keep, "I'll protect you." The door opened quietly. Dr. Collins stepped in, holding a clipboard with a manila envelope clipped to it. His face was composed, but Emily noticed the subtle way he inhaled before speaking. "I have the initial paperwork for the birth registration," he said, his voice neutral. "Do you feel up to going through it?" Emily straightened her posture, exhaustion pressing on her shoulders. "Yes," she said, though it came out as more of a sigh than an answer. He closed the door behind him and approached the rolling tray table, laying down the form. It was a crisp state-issued birth certificate form, still blank except for the hospital's header. "Normally," he continued, "both parents sign within 24 hours. If the father refuses, the mother can proceed on her own, but it changes the legal status and affects certain benefits." Emily nodded faintly. She had already been bracing herself for this. "I know he's not going to sign," she said. "He made that clear." Dr. Collins paused, then lowered his voice. "I heard more about last night from the staff. Security reported that your husband was pacing outside the ward for hours after leaving the room. He made 2 phone calls, both from the hospital's public phone. He seemed agitated." Emily felt her stomach tighten. "Did he say anything?" "No," Collins said. "But I've also been contacted by the hospital's legal liaison. They've had situations like this before. They're ready to provide assistance if you want to register the child under your name only." Emily exhaled slowly. "I just want it done," she said. "I can't go through another scene like yesterday." Collins hesitated, glancing at the envelope he still held. "Before you sign, there's something else you should know." "Something about Jason." Her eyes met his. "What is it?" He sat down in the visitor's chair, leaning forward slightly. "As part of the hospital's routine background check for fathers listed on birth certificates, we ran Jason's details because of the confrontation yesterday. It's policy to verify identities in contentious cases." His insurance flagged a note. He lowered his voice even more. Jason is listed as having a fertility-related condition that would make it extremely unlikely, if not impossible, for him to father a child naturally. Emily's fingers tightened on the blanket. You're saying? I'm saying the hospital already has a file confirming his condition, Collins said gently. He knew. He had to know. And instead of disclosing it, he preemptively accused you. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she refused to break down. Not yet. Show me, she whispered. Collins slid the envelope toward her. Inside was a printed copy of an insurance claim and a specialist's report dated 2 years earlier. Emily's breath caught as she read the words, congenital obstructive azoospermia, in black ink, a condition diagnosed in adolescence but confirmed again in adulthood. Sterility. Permanent. Her hands trembled as she pushed the paper back. He lied to me, she murmured. All this time. Collins spoke softly. It appears so. A knock interrupted them. The door cracked open and Linda stepped inside, her face pale and drawn. She carried a small paper bag, probably breakfast she hadn't touched. Emily stiffened, but Dr. Collins gave her a reassuring nod before standing up. I'll give you two some privacy, he said. We'll finish the paperwork when you're ready. He left, closing the door behind him. Linda stayed near the threshold at first, clutching the bag like a shield. I didn't know he was going to do that yesterday, she said quietly. I swear I didn't. Emily looked at her, her voice steady but cold. You didn't stop him either. Linda winced. You don't understand how Jason gets when he feels cornered. He lashes out. But this, she trailed off, eyes glistening. This isn't what I raised him to be. Emily turned away, focusing on her baby. Then why are you here? Linda took a step forward. Because I need to tell you something. I overheard a call last night. Jason called someone named Mark, from the hospital lobby. He was panicked. Said, they're going to find out. Emily's head snapped back toward her. Find out what? I don't know, Linda whispered. But he kept saying, it's not supposed to come out this way. Then he hung up when he saw me. Emily stared at her, pulse hammering. Do you know who Mark is? Linda hesitated, then nodded slowly. He's an old friend of Jason's. From high school. They've stayed in touch over the years, but Mark's not exactly the kind of friend you call when you're in trouble. He's been in and out of legal trouble himself. Emily's mind churned. So Jason's hiding something else. Linda wrung her hands. I'm afraid so. Emily glanced at the birth certificate form on the tray table. He's not just trying to humiliate me. He's trying to cover something up. Linda's lips trembled. I think he's desperate, Emily. Emily took a steadying breath. Then I'm going to protect myself and my son. I'm signing this now. She reached for the pen, but Linda placed a hand gently on hers. Please, let me help you. I don't know how yet, but I will. Emily searched her face. For the first time since the ordeal began, Linda didn't look like an adversary. She looked like a mother caught in a nightmare she couldn't fix. Then tell me everything you know about Jason, Emily said softly. All of it. Linda swallowed hard. It's not my story to tell, she whispered. But I'll tell you what I can. He was diagnosed as sterile when he was 16. He hated the world for it. He hated himself. He always felt like less of a man. And when he met you, I think he thought he could finally pretend it wasn't true. Emily's grip on the pen tightened. And when the baby came, he panicked, Linda finished. Emily lowered her gaze to the form. She wrote her name slowly, carefully, on the mother's line. On the father's line, she left it blank. When she was done, she placed the pen down. I won't let him drag me through this anymore, she said quietly. I'm done playing his game. Linda exhaled shakily. "I'll stand by you if this goes to court," she promised. "Jason's father, he won't, but I will." Emily nodded once, her expression unreadable. "Then start by telling me how to reach Mark." Linda's eyes flickered with unease, but she nodded. "I'll find his number." Emily turned back to her baby. His tiny face was peaceful, untouched by the chaos swirling outside this room. She touched his cheek and whispered, more to herself than to him, "This ends now." For the first time since the ordeal began, she felt a flicker of strength rising through the exhaustion. She had been humiliated, accused, cornered, but now she had the truth in her hands. And the truth, she realized, could be more powerful than anything Jason had left. 2 days passed, each one thick with silence and the unshakable sensation that something was building behind the scenes. Emily was discharged from the hospital and moved into a small temporary suite provided by the maternity wing, meant for recovering mothers who needed to stay close for follow-up care. She accepted it gladly. It gave her distance from Jason's family and time to piece together the fragments of truth still sharp in her mind. The birth certificate had been filed without a father's name. Jason had not returned to the hospital. And Emily hadn't heard from him. She didn't need to. Everything she needed to know was already sealed in the envelope she had tucked into her bag, the medical confirmation of Jason's sterility, signed by a specialist years ago. It was enough to clear her name, enough to raise deeper questions about Jason's motives. But still, something about the way he had stormed out, not just angry, but frightened, haunted her. Rachel came to visit the next morning, balancing coffee in one hand and a bag of breakfast in the other. She placed them down and immediately sat at the edge of the bed, her eyes scanning Emily's face. "You look better today," she said gently. "Less pale." Emily gave a small smile. "Sleep helps." "Sleep and silence," Rachel corrected. "Still no word from him?" Emily shook her head. "But his mom came back yesterday. Told me he called someone named Mark. Said he was panicking." Rachel leaned back. "Mark? You think he's part of this?" "I don't know. I asked Linda to find his number, but I haven't heard back." Rachel glanced at the bassinet. "And the test?" Emily nodded slowly. "They ran it yesterday. Dr. Collins said the results would be ready within 24 hours. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You're ready for that?" Emily didn't answer right away. She looked at her son, asleep in a blanket that looked too large for his small body. "I'm not afraid of the result," she said quietly. "But I am afraid of what it might uncover." Before Rachel could ask more, there was a knock. Dr. Collins stepped in, his presence now familiar. He nodded to Rachel, then turned to Emily, holding another envelope, this one white, sealed, with the hospital's stamp pressed into the corner. "The results are in," he said. Emily motioned for him to come in. Rachel stood, walking to the side of the room and giving them space. Collins pulled up a chair and sat across from Emily. He placed the envelope in her hands. "You're listed as the mother. Jason is not listed as the father. But, due to the blood incompatibility, we proceeded with a formal DNA test to confirm everything conclusively. These are the full results." Emily didn't open it immediately. She stared at the seal, her fingers tracing its edges. "Do I need to be worried?" she asked. Collins shook his head. "Not in the way Jason wants you to be." She opened the envelope, unfolded the paper, and scanned the top portion. Her eyes found it quickly. Paternity exclusion, confirmed. Jason was not the biological father. But she already knew that. What she didn't expect was the section at the bottom, a note added by the hospital lab technician. A nonparental familial match detected, possible sibling relationship between alleged father and biological father. Emily froze. "What does this mean?" she asked, lifting the paper and handing it back to Collins. He adjusted his glasses. "It means the child shares partial DNA with Jason, just not enough for a direct parent-child link. But enough to suggest the father is someone closely related to him. A brother, perhaps." Emily blinked slowly. A brother. Then it hit her. Tyler. Jason's younger brother. The image of him hovering at the hospital, quiet, conflicted, stepping between Jason and the chaos, it all came rushing back. He had been unusually reserved during the confrontation. Almost ashamed. Rachel stepped forward. "You okay?" Emily didn't respond right away. She felt like she was falling through her own thoughts. "Tyler and I were never," she began, then shook her head. "Except once." Rachel's eyes widened. "What do you mean, once?" Emily lowered her voice. "It was months ago. Jason was away for work. I had just found out about his affair. I was a mess. Tyler came by with groceries, trying to cheer me up. We talked. We drank wine. I broke down. And then..." Rachel covered her mouth. "Oh my God. It was just once," Emily whispered. "And we both promised never to speak of it again." Dr. Collins stood slowly. "This confirms what you likely feared," he said carefully. "But it also means the baby's biological father is someone close. That may have legal implications, depending on what steps you take next." Emily nodded, her throat dry. "Thank you, Dr. Collins." He offered a brief, respectful nod before leaving the room. Rachel sat beside her again. "Do you think Tyler knows?" "I don't know," Emily said. "But if he does, he's kept it quiet. And Jason, if he found out..." She trailed off. Rachel connected the dots immediately. "Then this isn't just about betrayal. This is about revenge. Jason didn't think you cheated with anyone. He thought you cheated with Tyler." Emily leaned forward, elbows on her knees, face in her hands. "If that's true, then all of this, the outburst, the accusations, the humiliation, it wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated. He wanted to destroy me before I could destroy him." Rachel's voice softened. "What are you going to do?" Emily sat up again, looking at the test results on the table. "I need to talk to Tyler. Alone. I need to know how much of this he's been keeping from me." Rachel hesitated. "Are you sure that's safe?" "I'm not afraid of Tyler," Emily said. "I just need answers." Later that afternoon, she made the call. Tyler answered on the second ring. "Emily?" His voice was cautious. "Can we talk?" There was a pause. Then, "Yeah. Yeah, of course." "Where?" "The hospital." Quietly. "Backlot entrance." "No one else." She hung up before he could ask why. When Tyler arrived, his face was pale, his hands shoved in his pockets. Emily met him outside, standing beside the bench near the emergency exit where smokers usually gathered during breaks. No one was around. He approached slowly, eyes wary. "I'm guessing this isn't just about the baby," he said. Emily didn't waste time. She handed him the test result. He read it, slowly. His face changed with each line, confusion, realization, then dread. He looked up. "You know." "I do," she said. His voice cracked. "I didn't mean for that to happen. That night. I should have stopped it." Emily held up her hand. "I'm not here to argue about that night. I just need to know, did Jason find out?" Tyler nodded slowly. "I think so. A few weeks ago, he confronted me. Asked if anything ever happened between us. I denied it, but he didn't believe me. He said if it was true, he'd make sure we both paid." Emily's stomach twisted. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid," Tyler admitted. "And I thought maybe it would go away. But when he saw the baby, he knew." Emily looked away, the pieces falling together with brutal clarity. "Did you tell your mom?" she asked. Tyler shook his head. "No. She thinks Jason's just being dramatic." Emily looked back at him, her voice cold now. You need to tell her. Because if Jason tries to retaliate legally, she needs to know the full story. Tyler swallowed hard. I will. Emily took a step back. And Tyler, if you care about this child at all, stay away until I say otherwise. He didn't argue. He only nodded, the weight of guilt etched deep into his features. As Emily walked back into the hospital, the air felt heavier. The truth had finally surfaced, not the truth she wanted, but the truth she needed. And now, she had to decide what to do with it. The morning air was cooler than expected for early fall in Pittsburgh. A faint mist curled through the hospital's side parking lot as Linda Matthews stepped out of her car. She stood there for a moment, hand resting on the roof, her gaze locked on the maternity wing's entrance. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she walked, her movement slow, uncertain. There was no denying it anymore, something terrible had been hidden beneath the surface of her family for years. And now, it was rising fast, threatening to consume everyone in its path. She had spent the night going through old boxes in her basement, looking for anything that might help her understand the darkness unraveling around her. She didn't sleep. How could she? The words in that hospital room echoed on a loop in her mind. The paternity test, Jason's breakdown, Emily's steady silence. She had failed as a mother in ways she couldn't articulate, and she knew it. But she wasn't going to sit quietly while her son imploded and dragged others down with him. When she stepped into the maternity wing, she went straight to the nurse's desk and asked for Dr. Collins. It took only a few minutes before he emerged from one of the examination rooms, adjusting the stethoscope around his neck. He spotted her, eyes narrowing slightly. Mrs. Matthews, he said with a measured tone. I wasn't expecting you today. I need to speak with you. Privately, she said, clutching her handbag tightly. It's urgent. He gestured toward an unoccupied consultation room. Once inside, he closed the door behind them and folded his arms. Linda didn't sit. She took a deep breath, then pulled a thin folder from her bag. Inside were copies of Jason's childhood medical records, insurance claims, and, at the bottom, an envelope that had remained sealed for years. This isn't for Emily. Not yet, she said quickly. This is for you. To understand what you're dealing with. Collins opened the folder, scanning the contents. These are from his pediatrician? Yes, Linda said. Jason was 16 when the first issue was flagged. He had undescended testicles, he had surgery for it, you can see the report. But after that, his urologist ran tests. They told us the damage was likely permanent. That he might never have children. Collins's brow furrowed. And Jason was told this? Linda nodded slowly. He refused to accept it. Said they were wrong. He said if he ignored it, it wouldn't be true. He never got follow-ups. Never let us talk about it. Collins set the folder down. You realize this supports what Emily told us. I know, she whispered. But there's more. Something I've never told anyone. He said nothing, waiting. I wasn't the one who found out first, Linda continued, her voice shaking. It was my husband. Harold. He took Jason to that appointment. When he came back, he told me, he'll never be a father. I remember those words exactly. I wanted to talk to Jason about it. I wanted to help him. But Harold shut it down. Why? Because of shame, she said bitterly. Because a Matthews boy couldn't be weak. Couldn't be broken. Harold said we'd never speak of it again. And we didn't. Until now. Collins leaned forward slightly. Do you think Harold knows what Jason's been doing? I think he knows more than he lets on, she said. And I think Jason's fear of being exposed isn't just about the baby, it's about the image. The pride. The Matthews name. He thinks if this truth comes out, he's ruined. The doctor nodded. But it's already out. Linda looked down. Then it's time everyone else sees it too. He opened the envelope she had handed him last. Inside was a medical report from 5 years ago, Jason's most recent test. It confirmed everything. His sterility wasn't speculation. It was clinical fact. "I want Emily to see this," Linda said. "She deserves to know everything. But more importantly, I want my son to be held accountable. I protected him for too long. I can't undo the damage, but I can stop enabling it." Collins nodded. "I'll make sure she sees it. And I'll make sure it becomes part of the medical file." Linda stepped back toward the door. "One more thing." He looked up. "If Jason shows up here again, angry, unstable, I want security called. Immediately. He won't listen to me anymore. He won't listen to anyone. But if he thinks you've got something on him, he'll snap." Collins studied her for a moment. "Has he ever been violent?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "Not physically. But emotionally?" "Yes. Over and over." He nodded, and Linda left without another word. Later that afternoon, Collins brought the new documents to Emily. She was feeding the baby, seated in the same hospital room that had become both her shelter and her prison. Rachel was gone, but Emily didn't feel alone anymore. She had the truth now. And the weight of it was finally grounding her. Collins sat down across from her and handed her the folder. "Jason's mother brought this to me this morning." Emily opened it, scanning the pages. Her breath caught when she reached the final report. The same diagnosis. 5 years ago. "She knew?" Emily asked. "She found out at the same time Jason did. But his father made them keep it quiet. The pressure to appear strong, it runs deep in that family." Emily closed the folder. "And now?" "Now it's official," Collins said. "We'll add it to the case. If Jason tries to make a legal move, he won't get far. We have medical evidence on record." Emily nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. "It's not just about proving I didn't lie. It's about understanding why he did." "You already understand," Collins said. "He's afraid of being exposed. And when people like that are afraid, they try to destroy anything that threatens their secret." Emily looked at her son. "He tried to destroy us. But he failed," Collins said gently. "And you're still here." That night, as Emily sat alone by the window, watching the lights of the city blink in the distance, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "They told you, didn't they? You think this is over. It's not. Jay." She stared at the screen for a long time before setting the phone down. She didn't need to respond. Because deep down, she already knew, Jason was unraveling. And now, he was the one being hunted by the truth. By the end of the week, the leaves outside the hospital windows had begun to change. Yellows and burnt oranges crept through the tree line like a quiet warning that nothing stays hidden forever, not even time. Emily stood in front of the mirror in the private recovery suite, fastening the last button on a clean shirt. Her body still ached, but it wasn't the same pain she had felt the day she gave birth. This pain was different. It wasn't physical. It was sharper. It was the growing clarity that she had been living inside a constructed reality for years, and now it was collapsing around her. She had cried enough. The tears had run dry 3 days ago. There was only one thing left now: action. Rachel arrived shortly after 9 in the morning, coffee in hand, her expression already braced for bad news. "What's the plan?" she asked, sitting on the window bench as Emily adjusted the straps on the baby carrier. Emily looked up. "We go to the administration desk. I want an official request filed for a legal DNA test. Not just hospital run. I want one that can hold up in court. Then, I want the hospital to contact Child Services and record Jason's refusal to sign the birth certificate and his verbal disavowal. He tried to paint me as the liar. Now I want everything he said to be documented, formally." Rachel raised her eyebrows. "You sure you're ready for this?" "No," Emily admitted. But I don't have a choice. If he's this desperate, I need to be ahead of him, not behind. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay. Let's do it. They made their way to the hospital's administrative floor. A young receptionist greeted them with a clipped smile, but when Emily requested to speak to someone from the hospital's legal or compliance department, the receptionist's smile faded. Within minutes, a liaison was summoned, Mrs. Darrington, a tall, angular woman with a no-nonsense tone and a legal pad tucked under her arm. They met in a small glass-walled office just past the nurses' break room. You're requesting a formal record of all paternity-related events? Darrington asked after introductions. Yes, Emily said. Including verbal statements made by Jason Matthews, who was present during and after the birth. Do you have documentation of these statements? No recordings, Rachel interjected, but there were witnesses. Nurses, Dr. Collins, and members of Jason's family. Darrington jotted notes as she listened. And the reason for the formal request? Emily didn't hesitate. I believe Jason is planning to retaliate. I have evidence that he knowingly lied about his ability to father a child. I also believe he fabricated claims of infidelity to discredit me in the eyes of his family and, potentially, the legal system. Darrington looked up from her notes. Has he made threats? Emily reached into her pocket and slid her phone across the table. The screen displayed the last message Jason had sent. Darrington read it and exhaled slowly. Do you want a restraining order? Not yet, Emily said. But I want this documented now, in case it escalates. Darrington nodded. We can file a report and send it to both hospital security and our legal counsel. I'll also note that he's not to have unsupervised access to you or the child on hospital property. You'll need to contact a family attorney to begin proceedings outside our jurisdiction. I will, Emily said. Today. Darrington looked impressed. You're handling this better than most would. Emily didn't flinch. I've had no choice but to be stronger than I wanted to be. After they left the office, Rachel glanced at her with a mixture of pride and concern. You're becoming scary good at this. I'm tired of being someone's victim, Emily said. That ends now. Later that afternoon, she met with a lawyer recommended by Dr. Collins's office, a woman named Monica Albright, who specialized in family law and custody disputes. They met at a quiet legal firm near Shadyside, away from the noise and tension of the hospital. Albright was methodical, precise. She reviewed every document Emily brought, including the test results, Jason's medical history, the birth certificate, and even Linda's handwritten statement confirming Jason's prior knowledge of his infertility. This is a very compelling start, Albright said, tapping the stack of papers. What you're describing could be interpreted as intentional defamation, and in some cases, coercive control, especially if Jason attempts to file for custody or visitation under false pretenses. Emily leaned forward. What can I do to protect myself and my son? We'll file for sole custody, Albright said. With supporting evidence that Jason knowingly misled you and the medical system. If he attempts to challenge paternity, we'll use the certified DNA test results and his medical diagnosis to block it. From there, we can petition the court to deny him any legal rights over the child. We'll also request that he be barred from unsupervised contact. And if he tries to discredit me? Albright gave a confident smile. Then we bury him in the truth. That evening, as Emily returned to her room, her baby sleeping peacefully in her arms, she found an envelope taped to the hospital room door. No name. Just her first initial in blocky handwriting. Inside was a photo, one she had never seen before. It was of Jason, seated at a bar, beside a woman with long dark hair and a crooked smile. His hand was on her knee. The timestamp in the corner dated the image to 4 months earlier, right around the time Emily had discovered his infidelity. But there was something else. The woman in the photo was visibly pregnant. Emily stared at it, breath catching in her throat. Rachel, who had just stepped inside with a water bottle, froze when she saw her expression. What is that? Emily handed her the photo. Rachel squinted at it, then gasped. Oh my God! He got someone else pregnant? I don't know, Emily whispered. But whoever left this, they want me to know. Rachel looked around the hallway. You think it was Tyler? I don't know, Emily repeated. But this changes everything. If Jason had impregnated someone else, it would mean he had lied not just about Emily's child, but possibly about his condition. Or worse, he had faked the pregnancy with someone else to cover his tracks, to create confusion. Or maybe it was a setup. Emily sat down, her hands trembling now for the first time in days. Jason had planned something. And whatever it was, she was only just beginning to see the edges of it. But she would not back down. If he wanted war, he would get one. But this time, she had allies, the truth, and the law on her side. And she was ready to fight. The air in the hospital corridor smelled faintly of antiseptic and stale coffee. Emily pushed open the door to the maternity wing's lounge, carrying her baby in a sling. She had spent that morning reviewing all her legal documents again, paternity test results, Jason's childhood medical records, the defamatory message, the mysterious photograph taped to her door. Each piece fit into a picture she still couldn't fully see, but the edges were converging. She sat on one of the overstuffed chairs, her eyes on the baby monitor. She felt Rachel approach and sit beside her. Rachel held back a question, sensing the fragile tension in Emily's posture. I just called Linda, Emily said quietly. She's going to try to reach Mark tonight. She said she found his number in an old phone directory entry. Rachel exhaled. So we'll get more information, maybe someone who can confirm what Jason was up to. Or at least someone he trusted, Emily replied. In the meantime, I requested hospital security to show me the access logs, the ones that record who enters private wings, who visited Jason overnight, who placed that photo on my door. Rachel straightened. You're going deep on this. Emily nodded. I can't leave any stone unturned. Later that afternoon, while Rachel watched the baby, Emily met Dr. Collins in a back hallway. He led her into a small office behind the nurse's station. Inside was a computer terminal and stacks of files. He tapped a few keys, then swiveled the monitor toward her. These are the logs, he said. Hospital security keeps detailed records of entrances, badge swipes, visitor sign-ins. Because of the confrontation yesterday, they flagged your room and the wing for extra monitoring. Emily leaned forward. What do they show? Collins scrolled down. Look here. At 3:20 in the morning, someone using a temporary badge entered this wing and accessed your room corridor. Name, Mark Jenner. Emily froze. She recognized the name. That's the Mark Linda mentioned. He nodded. He stayed for nearly 45 minutes. Then left by a side exit not monitored by the cameras. Emily's fingers trembled. Why was he able to get in at that time? Who gave him a badge? Collins's jaw tightened. That's under investigation. But there's more. 2 nights ago, there was a system override, timestamped 63 seconds after Mark's exit. It disabled movement sensors in several hallways for 1 minute. Enough for someone to walk between wings undetected. Emily's throat closed. Someone's covering for him. Collins sat back. Yes. Someone with access, authority. Rachel had joined them quietly, holding a legal pad. She glanced at the screen, then whispered, who could have that kind of access? Collins looked at them both. Only senior hospital staff, or someone with administrative privileges, people like heads of security, IT, or high-level management. Emily's mind raced. We need that override log. We need audit records. Collins nodded. I've already sent a request. It might take some time, but they're legally required to preserve everything now that you've made your request official. Emily turned to Rachel, voice firm. Rachel, I want you to start scanning social media, local news, anything about a Mark Jenner in Pittsburgh. See if there's a connection with Jason or his family. Rachel nodded, pulling out her phone. They left the security office. Emily's baby stirred, and she carried him back to the lounge. She felt as though she was walking inside a puzzle that was unraveling faster than she could keep up. That evening, she sat with Monica Albright at a small cafe near the hospital. Monica sipped a lukewarm tea, her expression grave. "I've drafted the motion to file for paternity disestablishment," Monica told her. "Given the DNA results and Jason's medical history, the odds are in our favor. But he'll fight it. He'll use every procedural trick he can find." Emily nodded. "Then we'll be ready." Monica glanced at the photo. "This photograph you received, if we can establish its authenticity and timeline, it could become key evidence. If Jason is connected to a second pregnancy, or was encouraging a rumor of one, that's material behavior." Emily's phone buzzed. She excused herself to check it. A text message. "Stop digging, Emily. You don't know how deep this is. J." She frowned, then showed it to Monica. The lawyer read it, then looked up, resolve in her eyes. "We can include this in the evidence. This is a threat, clearly tied to your case. We may need to file for a protective order soon." Emily set the phone down. "Do it." Monica nodded. "Tomorrow. And I'm ordering process servers to deliver notice to Jason that we plan to disestablish his paternal claim. He won't get away with this." When Emily returned to her suite, she closed the door behind her and sank into the armchair. Her son was asleep. She stared at the walls, at the soft hum of the hospital ventilation. Outwardly calm. Inwardly storming. 2 hours later, Rachel burst in, wide-eyed, gripping her laptop. "You won't believe what I found," she said. Emily swung around. "What?" Rachel set the computer on the table and showed her. It was a news clipping from an online Pittsburgh archive, a report from 5 years ago about a car accident involving a young man named Mark Jenner. The article mentioned he was the privileged grandson of a local hospital board member. There was a photo, Jenner standing beside a hospital building, badge in hand. Emily's pulse leapt. "He's connected to the hospital." Rachel continued. "I dug further. He used to be on the hospital's unpaid roster of temporary security aides. He never completed the training, but he never fully left the system either. His access privileges remained. And there are records of him entering hospital corridors when he was supposed to be off duty." Emily rubbed her forehead. "He's exactly the kind of insider who could manipulate things." Rachel nodded. "I also found social media interactions between Jenner and Jason, comments, likes, mutual friends, photos. They used to be close in college. Even went on vacations together." Emily felt the room shift beneath her feet. "He's more than a random visitor. He's a link. He may be the facilitator." Rachel's voice was fierce. "We need to find every breadcrumb between them, texts, emails, phone logs. We need Mark Jenner's full involvement laid bare." Emily swallowed hard. She felt the full weight of her task. She had come this far. She had fought publicly, legally, medically. Now she had to dig deeper, into the hidden alliances, the unspoken arrangements, the dark layers beneath Jason's collapse. She looked at her son asleep in her arms. This was no longer just about her reputation. It was about his future, his identity. It was about justice, and survival. The castle Jason built on lies was shaking, and soon, she would bring down its foundation. The next morning came quietly, a veil of fog hugging the windows of the hospital suite. Emily stared out from the cushioned bench near the crib, her arms wrapped around herself as though to hold back a shiver that had nothing to do with the weather. She had barely slept. Too many unanswered questions swirled through her mind, each more poisonous than the last. The discovery about Mark Jenner's connection to Jason was already deeply troubling. But Emily had the feeling this wasn't just about a friend covering for a friend. No. There was something else here, something older, something rooted not just in deception, but in denial. She could feel it. Linda arrived at 10 o'clock, looking older than she had only a few days ago. Her eyes were hollow, her voice thinner. I found Mark, she said as soon as she stepped inside. He's back in Pittsburgh. He lives out near Mount Lebanon now. I drove past the address to be sure. Emily straightened. Did you speak to him? Linda shook her head. No. I didn't dare. But I also found something else, something from years ago. Something you need to see. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn manila envelope, the corners creased and the seal barely holding. She handed it to Emily with a trembling hand. These were locked in the filing cabinet in our garage, Linda said. Harold kept them after Jason's therapy ended. I wasn't allowed to read them back then. Emily opened the envelope cautiously. Inside were copies of psychiatric evaluations from Jason's adolescence. Notes from a behavioral therapist. Psychological assessments. She began reading. Her breath caught after just a few lines. Obsessive need to control perceptions of masculinity. Deeply embedded fear of inadequacy due to early diagnosis of infertility. Emotional repression, particularly toward mother. Displays of extreme defensiveness when identity is questioned. Emily blinked. He was diagnosed with a personality disorder? Linda nodded. They never called it that officially. But the words were there: narcissistic tendencies, fear of exposure, performance-based self-worth. They said if it went untreated, he'd become manipulative. Dangerous. Emily read the next page slowly, her voice turning hollow. Patient expresses growing resentment toward potential partners. Says he'll never tell anyone the truth unless forced. Describes fertility diagnosis as a personal attack on his future. She looked up, stunned. He never processed it. He just buried it. Linda sat down, her voice barely above a whisper. When he was diagnosed, he became a stranger to me. He refused to see the urologist again. Refused therapy after a year. He convinced Harold to shut it down. Said he didn't need help, he just needed to move on. Emily felt her stomach twist. And then he met me. Linda wiped her eyes. You gave him everything he didn't think he could have. A beautiful woman. A stable home. Respect. And when you got pregnant, that illusion shattered. He thought I had betrayed him, Emily said softly. But he knew the whole time. He just couldn't let the truth be seen. Linda nodded. He wasn't trying to humiliate you, Emily. He was trying to erase the reality he's been denying for half his life. Emily stood slowly, pacing the room, the weight of the document still in her hand. He built his entire adult life on a lie. And when something threatened to crack it, he turned violent, verbally, emotionally, legally. Linda's voice cracked. I should have done something. Emily turned to her. You're doing something now. But the sense of dread in her chest only deepened. If Jason had gone this far to protect a delusion, how much farther would he go to reclaim control? That question was partially answered only an hour later. Rachel came rushing into the room, nearly out of breath, her phone in hand. You need to see this, she said, holding it out. It was a screen recording of a social media post, one that had already gained traction. Jason's account. A public video. His face on the screen. He was calm. Measured. Dressed in a blazer, sitting in front of a bookshelf to present a sense of authority. I've stayed silent out of respect for my family, he said in the video. But the lies have gone too far. I was deceived. My name was dragged through the mud. My wife hid the truth about her pregnancy. I have submitted documents to the court, and I will fight for what's right. The video ended. Emily's hands were shaking. He's preparing for a public fight. He's going to try to flip the narrative. Rachel nodded grimly. He's already got people commenting, some defending you, but others demanding your side of the story. He's painting himself as a victim. Emily grabbed her laptop and pulled up Monica's contact sheet. Within minutes, she was on a video call with her attorney. Monica didn't waste time. Will respond with a cease and desist. He can't use your name in defamation. And will move to have all court matters sealed to protect your child's privacy. But the damage is already happening, Emily said. People will believe what they want. Then we use what we have, Monica replied. We submit the psychological documents. Carefully. Respectfully. But we use them to show a pattern of unstable behavior. The courts won't just look at what he says. They'll look at who he is, and who he's always been. Emily nodded. Do it. That night, Linda returned home and confronted Harold for the first time in years. Emily didn't know what was said, but at midnight, Linda called her. I left, she said simply. I'm staying in a hotel. I can't defend him anymore. Emily closed her eyes, the ache in her chest softening slightly. Another tie broken. Another truth uncovered. And still, Jason hadn't stopped. But now, for the first time, he was being seen for what he really was. And Emily, humiliated, broken, abandoned, was becoming stronger than he had ever expected. The hospital conference room wasn't large, but it carried the weight of a courtroom. The blinds had been drawn shut, the fluorescent lights overhead casting a pale, sterile glow over the polished wooden table. Around it sat a collection of people who had once called themselves a family, now separated by unspoken accusations and years of buried secrets. Emily sat at the far end, her son asleep in his carrier beside her, wrapped in a soft blanket. Rachel stood nearby, arms crossed, protective and silent. Across the table sat Linda, her face drawn but resolute, and beside her, Tyler, eyes downcast, hands fidgeting in his lap. Jason sat directly across from Emily, his posture stiff, his jaw clenched. His lawyer sat to his right, whispering something occasionally, which Jason didn't acknowledge. His father, Harold, stood by the wall, arms crossed, his silence as sharp as his expression. The air between them was so tense, it was as though sound itself was hesitant to break it. Dr. Collins entered first, carrying a thick folder of documents and a printed copy of the DNA analysis. Monica Albright followed, placing her briefcase down and removing her notes. We're here today, Monica began calmly, because my client, Emily Sanders, has been subjected to character attacks, emotional harassment, and public defamation surrounding the paternity of her child. The facts we present today are not just personal, they are medical, legal, and verifiable. Jason scoffed under his breath. Here we go. Monica ignored him. She continued, pulling out copies of the paternity test, Jason's medical history, and the newly admitted psychiatric records. We are entering these into evidence. All documents have been reviewed by hospital administration and are being submitted as part of a sealed custody dispute. Jason's lawyer raised a hand. Objection. That documentation was never submitted formally to my office. You were given access 48 hours ago, Monica replied flatly. If your client chose not to review them, that's not our concern. Dr. Collins opened the folder and passed copies of the documents around the table. Everyone but Jason reached for them. He stared forward, jaw tight. Let's begin with the paternity test, Dr. Collins said. As you'll see, the child in question is not biologically linked to Jason Matthews. Furthermore, the secondary analysis confirmed a biological link to a close male relative. Tyler flinched but said nothing. Monica leaned forward. In addition to this, we have Jason's medical records from adolescence through adulthood. They show a long-standing diagnosis of congenital infertility. His condition was confirmed by at least 2 urologists over the span of 10 years. Jason's lawyer muttered, "We're disputing the authenticity of that record." Dr. Collins raised a brow. It came directly from this hospital's archives. If you're suggesting hospital fraud, I suggest you bring that accusation formally. Harold finally spoke. This is character assassination. No, Linda interrupted, her voice steady. This is the truth. The same truth you made me keep buried for years. Jason was told when he was 16 that he could never father a child. He knew it. You knew it. And you told me to keep my mouth shut. Jason's head snapped toward her. You said you'd never bring that up. Emily leaned forward. You said you'd never lie to me. Jason glared at her. You cheated on me. With my brother. Tyler stood abruptly. I didn't plan it. None of it was planned. You were never there, Jason. You were cruel. You were cheating on her. That night. Shut your mouth. Jason exploded, slamming a fist on the table. His lawyer reached out, trying to calm him, but he shook her off. Dr. Collins remained composed. This is exactly why this meeting was necessary. Jason has accused Emily publicly of infidelity and fraud. Those accusations are now disproven. The child was not fathered by Jason, and Jason was never capable of fathering a child. Jason stood, glaring at everyone. You're all against me. This was a setup. Linda's voice broke through the noise. It wasn't a setup. It was your life catching up to you. He looked at her, betrayed. Even you? You lied to your wife. You tried to ruin her life to cover up your own lies. I protected you for years, Jason. But I won't anymore. Not after this. Jason turned to Harold. Dad, say something. Harold didn't move. You made your choices. You live with them. Jason looked between them all, then turned and walked out of the room. Silence settled, thick and heavy. Monica finally spoke. We'll file for sole custody immediately. With these records, the court will have no basis to consider Jason as a legal parent. His public statements have already damaged his credibility. Emily nodded slowly. Thank you. Tyler remained standing, staring at the empty doorway Jason had just stormed through. Linda reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she touched Emily's. I know this doesn't fix everything. But I hope it's a start. Emily looked at her, unsure of what to say. The betrayal ran deep. But so did the courage it took to sit in this room and choose the truth. After the meeting dispersed, Emily returned to her suite. The baby stirred, and she lifted him gently from the carrier. She held him close, her heartbeat steady now, no longer racing with fear. The truth had been revealed. In front of everyone. There was no more hiding. No more pretending. The Matthews family had fractured under the weight of the lie it had tried so long to suppress. And Emily, humiliated, betrayed, and left alone, had stood her ground. Not as a victim, but as a mother who had chosen to fight. The following day began without drama, a rarity Emily didn't trust. She had grown used to each sunrise bringing a new blow, a revelation, a confrontation, a lie exposed. But that morning, all was quiet, too quiet. Her baby lay peacefully beside her, nursing without issue, and the hospital room was dim, still. Rachel had stepped out to get breakfast. Monica was in court filing the custody motion. Linda hadn't called. Even Tyler hadn't messaged since the family meeting. And Jason? He had disappeared. Emily should have felt peace. Relief, even. But instead, unease clung to her like a second skin. She sat in silence until there was a knock at the door. Not urgent. Not hesitant. Just polite. Dr. Collins stepped in, holding a slim tablet and a printout. I've got something, he said. Something I thought you should see in person. Emily motioned for him to sit. Go on. He placed the paper on the tray in front of her. This came from hospital intake records. Routine, really. We checked the emergency contact lists of all visitors with access to certain wards, especially when security incidents occur. You asked me to flag anything unusual. She nodded. I remember. Collins tapped the document. This is from the system logs, a few weeks before your due date. A man came into the ER late at night. He listed you, Emily Sanders, as his emergency contact. He was only treated for dehydration, but the name raised a red flag during our review. Emily leaned forward, squinting at the name typed at the top of the form. Ben Caldwell. The room tilted slightly. The name hit like a memory she had boxed away. Ben, she whispered. Collins looked at her carefully. Do you know him? Yes. He was a friend. Years ago. Before Jason. We reconnected briefly a few months ago. She ran her hand through her hair, heart racing. It was just one night. I had just found out about Jason's affair. I was broken. Ben found me crying in the parking lot behind the bookstore we used to go to in college. We talked for hours. Then. Collins waited patiently. Emily swallowed. It was only that one night. I never expected to see him again. He didn't push. He didn't even try to follow up. Well, Collins said gently, he listed you as his emergency contact. Which means he trusted you. And he came here, long before the baby was born. Emily's mind spun. What does that mean? It means, Collins said, that it's worth reconsidering what you've assumed. She looked at him, confused. Emily, he said, everyone's been focusing on Jason's infertility and the DNA link to his family. But the results only showed a partial match, a possible sibling. What if that match wasn't to Tyler? She froze. What if it was to someone else in Jason's orbit? He continued. Someone who isn't biologically related to him, but comes from the same town, the same region. It's rare, but in cases where there's shared ancestry or community overlap, false partial matches can occur. Especially with limited genetic data. Emily stared at the paper. You think Ben could be the father? It's a possibility, Collins said. We'd need a formal test to know for sure. The breath left her lungs. All this time, she'd assumed the timeline pointed to Tyler. The guilt, the shame, the night she buried deep and never told anyone about, it had always been the night Jason left for a trip with his coworker, the same week she discovered the affair. But Ben? He had been kind. Respectful. She hadn't even let herself consider that night might have changed everything. Where is he now? She asked. Collins shrugged. He was discharged 2 weeks ago. We only had his emergency intake info, and there's no record of him returning. Emily pulled out her phone, heart pounding. She hadn't saved his number. She didn't even know if he had changed it. But she remembered the bookstore. She called Rachel immediately. Can you meet me at Little Pines? Emily asked. The used bookstore downtown. It's urgent. Rachel didn't question it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Emily packed the baby bag in record time, strapped her son into the carrier, and headed to the hospital exit. As she walked through the lobby, nurses gave her knowing glances. Some smiled. Some nodded. One even whispered, "Good luck." Outside, the air was brisk and fresh. She called a car and directed it to the bookstore. When she arrived, the bell over the door chimed softly, just like it had 10 years ago. Nothing had changed. The same dusty shelves. The same old man behind the counter, reading a detective novel with a magnifying glass. Rachel arrived seconds later, out of breath. You think he's here? She asked. I don't know, Emily said. But if he's in Pittsburgh, he always comes here. They scanned the aisles quietly. And then, halfway through the poetry section, Emily saw him. Ben Caldwell. He looked almost exactly the same. Tall. Calm. A little more weathered around the edges, but still grounded. Still kind. He wore a threadbare coat and carried a small notebook in one hand. He looked up, and froze. Their eyes locked. Emily, he said softly. I didn't think I'd see you again. I didn't think I'd want to, she replied, stepping closer. But I do. He looked at the baby, eyes widening with something more than surprise, something closer to understanding. Rachel stepped back, giving them space. I need to ask you something, Emily said, her voice trembling. Ben nodded. Anything? Do you remember that night? She asked. He gave a faint, sad smile. Of course I do. Did you think? She couldn't finish the question. I wondered, he said. But you disappeared. You changed your number. I thought, maybe it wasn't my place to ask. She looked down at her son. Ben, I need to know. Are you willing to take a test? He didn't hesitate. Yes. Of course. Whatever you need. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She wasn't broken anymore. She was just tired. But for the first time in weeks, she felt something else, hope. They stood there in the quiet aisle, surrounded by old books and forgotten stories, about to rewrite their own. The testing facility Monica recommended was in a quiet medical building just outside downtown Pittsburgh, far from the chaos of the hospital or the scrutiny of anyone who might recognize Emily or Ben. The receptionist was kind, professional, and thankfully discreet. She took their paperwork without asking questions and handed each of them a clipboard with the consent forms. Ben filled his out without hesitation. He hadn't asked for explanations. He hadn't even pressed Emily for why she'd come back into his life with a newborn and this heavy request. He simply showed up the next morning like he had said he would, dressed in the same coat, with a calmness Emily envied. He was the kind of man who made silence feel safe. They waited in a small lounge, no TV, no noise, just the occasional rustle of magazines or the faint hum of the building's HVAC system. The baby, nestled in a carrier on Emily's chest, slept soundly. After about 30 minutes, a nurse called them back. The test was simple, a buccal swab for both Ben and the baby. Less than 5 minutes. No needles. No drama. Just cotton against the cheek and a quiet, all done. When they stepped back outside, the sunlight had grown warm against the sidewalk. Emily walked beside Ben in silence, the stroller wheels clicking softly along the path. I never wanted to disappear, she said finally. That night. I was unraveling. I felt ashamed the next day. Not because of you. But because of what it meant. Ben didn't look at her. He just nodded. I understood. You were married. You were in pain. I thought I could just tuck it away, she continued. Pretend it hadn't happened. Go back to fixing my marriage like nothing had cracked. She paused. I didn't even consider the possibility that night could have changed everything. I did, Ben admitted. 4 weeks. But I respected the silence. I figured if you wanted me to know, you'd find me. I should have, Emily said. Earlier. You came when it mattered. They stopped at the edge of the sidewalk. The breeze tugged gently at Emily's hair. If the test confirms it, she said, I'm not asking for anything. No child support. No obligations. I don't want to force you into something. I know, Ben said, finally looking at her. But I don't walk away from people I care about. His voice wasn't grand or dramatic. It was quiet. Steady. Real. They parted ways without a long goodbye. Just a nod. A silent agreement that, no matter what the test said, they would both wait, together this time, for the truth. 3 days later, the call came. Emily had just settled the baby after a particularly rough feeding when her phone rang. Unknown number. Her heart skipped. She answered on the 3rd ring. Ms. Sanders? This is Dr. Lee from Allegheny Genetic Services. I'm calling with the results from the paternity test you completed with Mr. Benjamin Caldwell. Emily held her breath. I'm pleased to inform you that the test results confirm Mr. Caldwell is the biological father of your child, with a probability of paternity exceeding 99.9%. She didn't speak. Couldn't. Just nodded into the silence. Would you like a digital copy of the report sent to your attorney? Yes, she said, barely above a whisper. Please. After she hung up, she sat on the edge of the hospital bed, the baby now sound asleep again, as though he'd been waiting for peace before finally resting. Emily felt a quietness settle in her bones, not the empty kind, but something different. Something final. She texted Ben a simple message. "It's you." His response came 10 minutes later. "I'm honored." That evening, Monica met Emily in the hospital suite to go over the legal steps that would follow. "This changes things," Monica said. "Jason no longer has any legal or biological claim to the child. Tyler's partial match is now clearly a red herring. We'll file a motion to formally establish paternity in Mr. Caldwell's name, and request full maternal custody with shared visitation, should he desire it." Emily nodded. "He's not the type to run." Monica smiled. "Good. Because now that we've discredited Jason's accusations and documented the entire medical history, his threats mean nothing." Emily looked out the window, watching the sky shift toward dusk. "Do you think he'll come back? Jason?" Monica considered that. Men like him rarely disappear quietly. But now he has no legal footing. And if he tries anything, he'll be violating multiple orders already in place. Rachel arrived just as Monica left, carrying takeout and 2 iced teas. She sat on the bed, cross-legged, unwrapping the food. "So?" she asked, mouth half full. "Ben?" Emily nodded. "It's official." Rachel exhaled, smiling. "Damn. That's a twist. A gentle twist. Finally." "I don't know what the future looks like," Emily admitted. "But for the first time, I'm not afraid of it." Rachel raised her tea in a toast. "To truth. And to peace." Emily clinked her cup against Rachel's, then looked down at her son. He wasn't the result of betrayal or scandal. He was the product of one honest night, during a time of heartbreak, between two people who had once shared something real, even if they tried to forget it. Now, Emily was done forgetting. She would not live in the shadow of Jason's rage, nor in the silence of her own shame. This child had a name. And soon, he would have a future built on something real. 3 months had passed since the last time Emily had seen Jason Matthews. After the court ruling officially severed all legal ties between him and the child, he vanished from public view. Monica informed Emily that his attorney had quietly withdrawn from further communication after receiving the DNA confirmation and psychiatric documentation. Whatever fire Jason had once stirred in his efforts to control the narrative had been smothered by the truth. The legal system had no interest in rewarding a man who weaponized lies to protect his own ego. The court granted Emily full legal and physical custody of her son. The birth certificate was amended. Where the father's name had once been blank, now read, Benjamin David Caldwell. The process of amending the document was slow, but symbolic. On the day it arrived in the mail, printed in crisp black ink, Emily stared at it for nearly an hour. It wasn't just a paper. It was the final severing of the chain Jason had tried to wrap around her neck. Her son now carried her last name, a decision she made deliberately. Ben had agreed without question. "I'll be part of his life however you want," he had said during one of their long conversations on the porch of Emily's new apartment. "But he's your son, Emily. You're the one who bled for him, broke for him, rose for him. His name should reflect that." The weeks that followed were filled with a kind of quiet Emily had never experienced before. Not emptiness. Not loneliness. But peace. She and Ben began a rhythm that didn't need defining. He visited several times a week, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just holding the baby for hours while Emily rested. They didn't rush toward labels. They didn't talk about the past more than necessary. What existed now was real and tender, and that was enough. Rachel remained a constant presence, her loyalty never wavering. She organized a small, naming day, celebration at her house with a few trusted friends. There were no grand speeches or champagne toasts, just warm food, soft music, and laughter. When Emily stood to thank everyone, she looked at her son, swaddled in her arms, and then at the people who had stayed when everything else had fallen apart. "I was humiliated," she said. "I was lied to, betrayed, and made to feel like I was nothing. But I'm still standing. And it's not because I'm strong, it's because I was believed. I was supported. I was loved. I want my son to grow up in a world where people choose the truth, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The room went still for a moment. And then came the applause, not loud or performative, just honest. After the celebration, Emily and Ben walked home in the quiet dusk. The baby slept between them in a sling, and they moved slowly, deliberately, as if they knew that every step was carrying them further from the chaos they had endured. "I think I'm going to start writing again," Emily said, surprising herself. Ben smiled. "About all this?" "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe just about women like me, women who got wrecked and then rebuilt." Ben paused. "I'd read that." She laughed. "You'd better." That night, after the baby was asleep, Emily stood at the window of her apartment and looked out at the street below. The world was still the same in so many ways. Cars passed, people walked, streetlights blinked in slow rhythm. But inside her, everything had changed. She was no longer the woman who sat in that hospital bed, eyes wide with confusion as her husband accused her of betrayal in front of his entire family. She wasn't the woman who doubted herself, who twisted her truth to fit someone else's narrative. She wasn't the woman who flinched every time Jason raised his voice. She was the woman who demanded the truth, no matter how messy. She was the woman who walked into courtrooms and faced down her abuser's lies. She was the woman who gave birth in pain and rose in fire. And she was the mother of a boy who would grow up knowing that his life began not in shame, but in resilience. Some nights, she still thought about Jason. About the cruelty he wielded so effortlessly. About the damage he tried to inflict. But those thoughts passed quickly now. They held no power. Not anymore. She never saw him again. He left town, according to Linda, who still called now and then to check on her grandson. She'd moved out of Harold's house permanently and was now living in a small rental on the other side of the city. Her apologies had grown less frequent and more sincere, and though Emily hadn't forgiven everything, she no longer carried the weight of that anger. Some wounds heal slowly. Some never do. But silence, she learned, can be healing too. Emily continued her life, working remotely, writing in the early hours when the baby napped, rebuilding her identity not as a wife, but as a whole person. Independent. Capable. Free. And Ben? Ben became something neither of them had planned, but both welcomed. He was not a savior. He didn't try to fix her. He just showed up. Every single time. With quiet strength and unwavering presence. One afternoon, Emily found him asleep on the couch, their son curled up on his chest. She stood there for a long time, watching them breathe in tandem. She didn't need to know what the future held. She just knew that whatever came, she was ready. Because the worst had already happened. And she had survived it. And in surviving, she had discovered the most unexpected thing of all. She was enough. Always had been. And from the ashes of lies, a new truth had risen. Not loud. Not dramatic. But honest. And it was hers. Forever.